Hi guys, it's Laura, and today I'm bringing you a much requested video that is how to become a school psychologist. This is going to be a two-part video because there is a lot to go over, so make sure you stay tuned for both parts. Let's get into it. Right. The first step in becoming a school psychologist is to graduate with your bachelor's degree. My suggestion is to get a degree in psychology. I think that's going to prepare you the most for what's to come in your graduate training, but something else like education or maybe even like sociology would be a good alternative. I know there's some people who think they want to be teachers and they end up going the more school counselor or school psychologist role, so that can definitely benefit you, but I do think psychology as a bachelor's degree is the way to go. So before you can become a school psychologist, you must have your bachelor's. So step number 2, which is actually going to happen before you graduate with your bachelor's degree, is to take the GRE. So the GRE stands for the Graduate Records Examination. So a little different from the SAT, ACT. You're not so much shooting for a score as much as you're shooting for a percentile. So there's a verbal and a nonverbal section of it. Again, similarly to any test you would have taken in high school. You will need to study. The biggest thing about taking the GRE is that it's things you probably haven't done in a long time. Similarly to like SAT, there's vocab, just words you probably don't use on an everyday. I know for me, the nonverbal, the quantitative section, which was math, I definitely had to study for and make sure I was ready for it because a lot of it were just legitimately questions I hadn't looked at since high school or the first couple years of undergrad. So part of that was just preparing. So you're going to want to take the GRE before you graduate with your bachelor's degree, and that's actually going to help you narrow down where you might like to end up for graduate school, mostly because some schools have a certain requirement. You need to be at this percentile, you need this score. Like I know one program I was looking at, they wanted you to be at the 75th percentile on both the verbal and quantitative sections of the GRE. I did not get the 70th percentile on the quantitative, on the math part, so that kind of ruled that out. So it does help, and a lot of programs, especially at the specialist level, don't have a requirement. They just want you to have taken the test. But do remember, it's going to be more challenging. Instead of going up against a bunch of high schoolers who think they might want to go to college, you're going up against people who are going to graduate school or probably top of their class. And like I said, it is a percentile rank is kind of what you're shooting for. So now that you are close to finishing your bachelor's, probably like the end of your third year, going into your final year, or maybe you've taken the GRE and you're waiting to get your scores back, you're going to need to make a very tough decision, or at least start thinking about a tough decision. And that is going to be whether you want to go for a specialist degree in school psychology or a doctorate degree in school psychology. There's no reason why you can't apply to both types of programs, but just know they are different paths. So this is something I wanted to spend a little time talking about. So school psychology is incredibly unique, that it is the only type of psychology profession. So there's like clinical counseling, industrial organization, there's different kinds. School psychology is the only psychology profession that you can refer to yourself as a psychologist without having a doctorate. So there's two paths when you're looking at school psychology. The first is a specialist program. So most people who graduate from this type of program, they have an EDS, or a specialist in education, meaning that they completed, usually it's 60 credit hours. So it's 2 years of full-time school plus a year-long internship. So it will take you minimum 3 years. The other course is a doctorate degree, which then has courses between those. But to note, a doctorate degree, that is the degree you would want to pursue if you ever think you want to go into academia, like you want to be a professor, like a full-time professor at a university doing research, that type of thing. If you think you might ever want to work in a more clinical setting, like a hospital, a more specialized setting, like maybe a setting for children with more intensive needs, or more like acute syndromes. Anything that is not a school psychologist position, you might want to consider getting your doctorate. It just can open up some more doors. That being said, the drawback of getting your doctorate is it takes longer and it costs more. It's a longer time before you're out there in the field. Benefits, you might be able to go in a field other than school psychology if that's ever a path that you would like to take. So those are kind of things you need to think about. I went and got my doctorate. On top of that, I got my PsyD, Doctorate of Psychology, not my PhD. So it took me a little less time than the PhDs, about a year less, but still a year longer than my specialist degree people. So for me, it was kind of a nice in-between. I ended up in the same place. I work for a school district. I am the school psychologist. I love what I do, obviously. So like I said, there's just kind of different paths to take. The vast majority of school psychologists are at the specialist level. So not getting your doctorate, you are absolutely still a competitive candidate for jobs. And honestly, if your end goal is to be a school psychologist in a school district, you will be perfectly happy getting a specialist degree and not getting a doctorate degree. There's not a huge difference. If you want to go into more leadership within the school district, maybe being like a director of school psychology or, like the head of the special education department, you might be a more highly considered candidate having your doctorate, but it really varies district to district. There's definitely not you have to have your doctorate to get this position. If you want to be a school psychologist, you're 100% set getting a specialist degree. So don't feel like you have to go doctorate route to be a school psychologist. You do not. Like I said, the benefit is it's 2 years, it's usually 60 credits, so similar to probably what you did in undergrad where you take 15 credits per semester, maybe mixed up a little bit, and then you do a year-long internship, which we will totally talk about. But that's kind of the difference between specialist and a doctorate degree. Make sure you comment down below if there's something I forget or you think people are really need to know about the difference between a specialist and a doctorate degree for school psychology. The other thing I forgot to mention about getting your doctorate degree in school psychology, I had kind of mentioned, if you ever want to work outside of a school setting, like a hospital or a more clinical setting, you'd want to get your doctorate. If you get your doctorate in school psychology, you can become a licensed psychologist. So, again, if your end goal is to be a school psychologist in a district, you don't need to worry about this. If at any point you might want to work for a private practice or another agency of that nature where insurance is involved, you might want to consider getting your doctorate, because if you are a licensed psychologist, that means you are licensed, usually by your respective state, wherever you are, to practice independently, which basically means you can sign your name, you can diagnose based on the DSM. I gesture behind me because my DSM is behind me. So it means you're able to practice independently. You're not under someone. When you're a school psychologist, you're technically under the school district. You may even be under a director of the psychology or director of special education, director of pupil services, whatever you call it. So basically it's saying you're technically working under somebody. It's not just your name. You sign it, it is your name, but they talk to the school district. School district would get in trouble before you would get in trouble. Anyway, so if you ever want to practice independently or work with insurance, you want to get your doctorate, because then you can become a licensed psychologist. That is again, a whole nother layer on top of things. There probably could be a video just dedicated to specialist versus doctorate, but I just want you to know that is a super important distinction you need to make. So when you're applying to programs, which is step 4, apply to programs, the whole reason we're talking about the specialist versus doctorate level is because you're gonna wanna know what you want to apply to. Now, you absolutely can apply to both. There's no reason why you can't, and then make that decision later, but definitely know that there is a difference. There's gonna be a difference in the admitting procedures, potentially the interview process, what they're looking for, it's going to be different. So just off the top of my head, specialist programs take more students than doctorate students. Specialist programs usually don't have graduate assistantships, so it's harder to get money from the school versus at the doctorate level. A lot of times there's opportunities with your university to make some money or not have to pay as much tuition. Some programs are completely covered. You don't pay anything. That's kind of rare in school psychology. It's more like a clinical psychology where there's 3 students and they do research. But anyway, so make sure you just keep in mind whether you're thinking specialist, doctorate, or still deciding between them and maybe waiting to see where you get in. But you want to start looking at programs, the first thing you want to do is visit nasponline.org. NASP is the National Association of School Psychologists. It is the School Psychologist governing board. They put out these standards and indicators that we use every day, that we use for how we learn, how we're supposed to give services. They are very important. You're going to become intimately familiar with NASP, and that's what's referred to, NASP, National Association of School Psychologists. So you want to visit NASP, NASP, online.org. That is the official NASP website, because on the NASP website, they are going to give you a list of every program in school psychology that is NASP approved. Now, here's the kicker. You do not have to attend a NASP approved program to become a school psychologist. It definitely helps. Potentially controversial opinion here. I think you should do everything within your power to attend a NASP approved program. So I would say the reason I think you should attend one of these programs, in my, not very long, I will admit, but my experience with other school psychologists and people that have attended versus haven't attended NASP approved programs, you get a more well-rounded scope of school psychology if you attend a credentialed program versus a non-credentialed program. That does not mean that a not NASP approved program isn't a good program. It just means they haven't gone through all the very rigorous process to become NASP approved. So if you're going to program and maybe they tell you like we're in the process of becoming, or we just have to have an on-site visit, like if they're in the process of it, that's probably not the worst thing in the world. But like the biggest difference I've noticed is that people who came from a not NASP approved program, like I said, they didn't get all the different experiences. So they didn't work on as much intervention and counseling and consultation. A lot of it was very testing heavy. And again, that is just my opinion. That is not a fact by any means. But if it's possible, I would definitely use nasponline.org as a resource to try to find a NASP approved program. Okay, so that's specialist. If you're thinking doctorate level, you can still attend a NASP approved program. There's NASP approved programs that are at the doctorate level. You want to also look for an APA approved program. APA is the governing body of psychologists. So there's kind of twofold. So you want a NASP approved program, and then you also want an APA approved program if you're going for your doctorate. If you don't go to a credentialed program, you run the risk of running into issues later down the road. So again, we'll talk about in this video. It's very long process. You have to pass exams and application process to become credentialed or licensed in your state to practice as a school psychologist. If you don't come from a NASP approved program, there's more things you have to submit. And similarly, for if you don't go to an APA approved program, it's a lot harder to become a licensed psychologist. There's just a lot more hoops you have to jump through. Again, not impossible, could become an issue later, especially if you're at the specialist level or even doctorate level. Another type of way to become a school psychologist is to become nationally certified. That is through NASP. So if you go through a NASP approved program, the process to become nationally certified is much easier. There's pros and cons to being nationally certified. One, sometimes districts give you a stipend from being nationally certified. It basically means that you went through a NASP-approved program, had a quality internship, versus not being certified. I'm currently not nationally certified. It makes no difference in my current practice and what I'm doing. Other people are at my district. It just completely depends. So again, it's just kind of helping you later. So if you're at the point where you're deciding, should I go to a NASP or APA approved program or not, you definitely want to lean towards going to those programs versus not. Now that you've applied to these programs that you could see yourself attending, you're going to start getting some interview requests. That is wonderful. Go to as many interviews as you can. If it's super far away, know that a lot of places will do over the phone call, Skype. I would suggest Skype if you can't go in person. First choice person, second choice Skype, third choice phone. It's kind of nice seeing the other person. You get sort of a better sense of who they are, who the professors are. They'll get a better sense of who you are if you do it over Skype where they can see you versus over the phone. Again, just my opinion. So go to these interviews, and here are my suggestions for when you go to these interviews. My first suggestion when you're going on these interviews is have questions to ask the professors, faculty. There may even be current students there. Have questions to ask. A lot of interviews will ask you, they'll say, do you have any questions? They expect you to ask a question. Even if it's a question you know the answer to, I would recommend still asking it. So, you may go and you may say they might ask you, they'll talk about here's what we do, here's the program, they'll ask you about you, your experience, that kind of thing, and they'll say, do you have any questions? You might want to say so I know this program is NASP approved, what is the emphasis on interventions here? Or is this are we working more on test heavy? What are the opportunities? Even if you already know, if you know, oh yeah, they're all about RTI, that's their whole thing, ask the question anyway. The professors want you to. Tip, professors want you to ask a question. Doesn't matter what it is. I mean, don't be like, what's your favorite color? That's stupid. But ask a question. If they let you talk to current students, talk to them. And those are the people where if there's an informal setting, some of our school psychology students, they're going to take you all out to dinner and get appetizers or whatever. That's when you want to ask more personal questions, or do you really like this program? Do you feel like you're being prepared? If you're at an interview and they're going to let you talk to students, maybe keep it a bit more professional. They are probably there, part interviewing you. So you just kind of have to play that by ear. I mean, don't ask them any embarrassing questions, but you do want to know. Or if you're relocating, you might want to ask them about the area. What is it like here? Did you move here? What was that experience? Were they helpful? Were people understanding? Were you able to go home for breaks? So those are all perfectly normal questions that lots of people ask. So ask lots of questions. This is your chance. And again, here's a Laura tip for you. They're interviewing you, but you're interviewing that program, right? So there's a really good chance you got a bunch of interviews, which means you're gonna get a bunch of places saying that, yeah, we want you. That's the goal. If you're at this point, that's probably what's gonna happen, right? So it's not just them interviewing you, do we want the student? You have to make a decision, is this somewhere that I wanna spend the next 2, 3, 4 years of my life in training for something that I plan to do for the rest of my life? So it's not just about them interviewing you. You have to make the decision at the end, so make sure you're getting as much information as you can. Final helpful Laura tip about interviewing, ask them about your practicum experience. I brought up in my 5 things I wish I knew before grad school video that I think the practical experience you get is actually more valuable than the lessons that you sit in. So now is the perfect opportunity to ask about that. Ask them if they have relationships with local school districts. Do they have opportunities for more clinical practice if you're going for your doctorate, or you'd want to try something like that? Do you get experience with lots of different types of disabilities, or is it the same thing over and over again? What do those local districts look like? Are you going to be with the same one? How much supervision will you get? That's important. You want as much supervision as you can get. That kind of sounds funny, but you do. You need all the supervision when you're starting. Even if you have experience in other schools or counseling or whatever, you want all the supervision you get. Crazy things happen in schools. It's nuts. So make sure you're asking them, like, what will that look like? And again, that's part of the, like, you are interviewing them. If they're like, yeah, you all go to one school, you're there one day a week, and you just shadow. No, that's not going to do it. Like, you need multiple experience across multiple settings. If you want more information about that, let me know. But like I said, your practicum experience is invaluable leading up to your internship, but still, practicum experience, super important. You need to ask about that. Make sure you ask. Step number 6, and the last step of part 1, is to decide on a program. So you've gone through all these steps, you've had your interviews, you've got all your letters or emails back saying, we'd love to have you. Now you have to decide. I'll be honest, like I said, I was in a situation where the decision got made for me. So I don't really have a lot of experience with this. So I would say my best suggestion is make a comprehensive decision. Don't just base it off of one thing. If you're moving and traveling, think about, like, I'm going to be living here for anywhere from 2, 4, 5 years, maybe even staying there indefinitely. Like, is that somewhere I want to go? Is that going to be a good fit for me? So I would talk to other people, talk to other classmates, your family, your friends, your loved ones, and try to make the best decision for you that you can make, because it is a decision that's ultimately going to impact the rest of your life. So don't take it lightly. Don't make a decision based on one thing. And best of luck. My gut feeling is that you're going to have a lot of different options. So make sure you just think about your options and make the decision that's right for you. Okay, so that was part 1. It was very long. There's a lot of steps. First things first, you got to get your bachelor's. Being a school psychologist, it's all about grad school. You got to get your bachelor's. Then, got to take the GRE before you graduate. You need that to apply to your schools. Before you start applying, definitely check out nasponline.org. That's the National Association of School Psychologists official website. That will help direct you to NASP-approved programs, which are definitely like the gold standards of programs. That's where I would recommend looking first for programs, both specialist and doctorate. Speaking of specialist and doctorate level, gonna have to start making some decisions. Do you want to pursue a specialist degree, which is 2 years of school, 1 year of internship? Or are you thinking more doctorate level, which is going to be 3 to 4 years of school, a year of internship, and potentially even a little longer if it takes you a little longer to do your dissertation? It's a lot of time. You need to start thinking about these things. Once you have done that, make sure you start applying to those programs. Don't miss any deadlines. Write it down. Be organized. I trust you. I'm sure you can do that. You're going to have interviews. Don't forget, they're not just interviewing you, you're interviewing them. Ask lots of questions. Don't be embarrassed to. Talk to everyone. Talk to as many people as you can. Get as much information as you can. Just somewhere you're just going to be spending a long part of your life. It's an important part of moving forward as part of being a school psychologist, so make sure you get as much information as you can. After those interviews, you're going to be getting all those acceptance letters and emails, so take it all in stride. Think about, am I relocating? Do I need to, what will living there look like? What about this program? Am I still deciding between specialist, doctorate? What would that practicum experience look like? Did I like the professors? Did I like the other people I was interviewing with? Lots of decisions to go into that, so my best suggestion with that is just trust your instincts, talk to lots of people, and make a whole decision based on lots of different things. Don't just base it off of one thing. All right, that was part 1 of how to become a school psychologist. Part 2 is coming at you very shortly, so make sure that you stay tuned. I'll see you then.